Hello everyone, and welcome to our Bay Area Playwrights Festival and Resident Playwright conversation today. Really appreciate you all joining us and anybody who's watching this later joining us for this conversation. My name is Jessica Beza, pronouns are she, hers. I'm the Executive Artistic Director at Playwrights Foundation. And here at Playwrights Foundation, our purpose is to support and empower playwrights, and we envision a future where they are radically centered as visionary leaders changing the world through storytelling. And we really, truly believe that. I feel like there is no theater without the playwright and the writer who is making the words behind the scenes and telling the story that they must tell. And also believe, writers change culture, worldviews, they can uplift and heal the soul, and I feel like that's why we love coming and hearing stories, because we want to be moved and we want to be touched in some way. But those stories don't just happen. There's a whole process that's behind the scenes that sometimes takes years to get to a certain point where an audience sees it. So today we're gonna talk with the playwrights directly about the kind of work that they like to write, what their process is, and at the end give a little opportunity for some of you all to ask some questions. And before we begin, we just want to respectfully acknowledge that we are here on the Ramatish Ohlone land and acknowledge the Ohlone people and the past, present, and future caretakers of this land. And we are here in this beautiful magic space where they have also, I feel like the art on the wall is very paying homage as well to the Ramatish Ohlone and who's in here right now. All right. Well, let's get to know a little bit more about our playwrights. I'm going to have them introduce themselves. I'm going to have our Bay Area Playwrights Festival playwrights introduce themselves. And the festival, we are in our 46th year this year. Yes, it has been around, one of the first new play festivals in the country, if you can believe that. Now I feel like they're all over the country, but this is one of the pioneers. And these playwrights were selected from an open application process of 600 applications, and with about 150 readers. So thank you to those that were readers. Anybody who's watching who is a reader, we couldn't have done this without you. And we have 5 playwrights who are in the festival. 3 of them are here with us today. I'm going to have them introduce themselves.
Hi, I'm Jason Tseng. I use they, them, and top pronouns. And a fun fact about myself is I broke into Dollywood.
I love that. Yes, I'm asking them to do name, pronouns, and a fun fact about themselves sharing. Thank you, Jason.
Okay, my name is Noa Gardner. He, him, my fun fact. I'm going to be 30 this year, this summer.
Also, I realized I should have had you all say what play is yours in the festival, so my bad.
I wrote Fear and Wonder. Do you need to talk about it or not?
That's okay.
Fear and Wonder, okay. I wrote Man.
What's up? My name is Aidaa Peerzada, and I use she, her pronouns, and I'm the writer of Children of Lies. And a fun fact about me is that, sorry, this is the fun fact we talked about earlier, so it's only surprise if you're watching. I really like to crochet, and I have a copious amount of yarn from the pandemic, so,
Great. And also our other program at Playwrights Foundation is the Resident Playwright Program, in which they are in residency with us for a couple of years, and they are all Bay Area playwrights. And they also have a mini showcase that is in the festival next weekend on Saturday at 4 o'clock. But we just kicked off their residency in January, so they're at the beginning of their 2 years. And next year, there will be public readings of their work. So I hope folks also continue to follow Playwrights Foundation and come back next year and see more of their work, even though you'll get a little taste in the festival this year. So we'll also introduce them as well.
Hi, I'm Leigh M. Marshall, she, her pronouns, resident playwright. And a fun fact about me is that in our family tree, in the Dark Ages, we had a pope in the family who was pope for a year and then smothered with a pillow.
That's got to make it into a play.
Hard to tell the murder plot. I'm Ruben Grijalva, resident playwright, he, him. Being in this building, it brings this fact to mind. My first full-length play was performed down at the South Side Theater here, and it was 2010, and it was about artificial intelligence. And the weird thing I'm thinking about right now is that it felt like this far-off thing, and like almost all the technology represented in that play just 14 years ago, I feel like either could be done today or will be doable within the next 5 years at the trajectory. And so that's just a weird thing being in this space again that's coming back to me. Is like, I was right, but like way wrong on the time scale.
Hi, I'm Sloka Krishnan. I use he, him pronouns. I am also a resident playwright. A fun fact about me is that I have not submerged myself in a body of water since high school gym class and the indignities of the swimming rotation.
Hi, my name is Cat Brooks. She, her, the occasional Bay Area bruh, and my name, Cat Brooks. Fun fact about me, I mean, they all know that I'm a Las Vegas native. We are far and few between, even though it's one of the fastest growing cities in the country. Very few people still are actually born there.
Thank you. Thank you all for little introductions, and hopefully, I think fun facts are always fun because they like stick in your brain, and make you think of who that person is. But we'd also love to hear a little bit more about your all's playwriting journeys, and if someone wants to kick us off and share, what was that like spark moment for you when you're like, I have to do this, or I think I'm a playwright now? When did you start either calling yourself a playwright, or start writing plays, or start writing? What was kind of that spark moment that led you into where you are now?
I mean, I got the mic, so I'll just go. So I've been in the theater since I was 8 years old, but as an actress, I was also a dancer. And I've always written poetry, etc. But I'm also an organizer. I do a lot of work around state violence. And in 2015, a couple of things happened. One, the Say Her Name movement, created by Kimberly Crenshaw, burst into the mainstream conversation, and we started to talk about women, Black women that have lost their lives to state violence. Up to that point, they primarily focused on Black men. And then here in the Bay Area, a 38-year-old mother and grandmother, Yvette Henderson, was gunned down on the West Oakland-Emeryville border with an AR-15. 3 days after that, in Fairfax, Virginia, a woman named Natasha McKenna, who was in the middle of a mental health breakdown inside of the jail, was murdered. She was tased to death. And I had all these Black women's names in my head because we were in the streets, and then these two things happened so close to each other. And at first what I thought I was gonna do was like write a montage about all of them. And then one night I couldn't sleep, and it was Natasha McKenna's voice, and she wouldn't stop talking. And so I woke up and I wrote a monologue. And then that ultimately, with the support of folks at Eastside Arts Alliance and Margot Hall and Dr. Aidaa Peerzada, became my first play, my first full-length play, which is called Tasha. So.
Great, thank you for kicking us off.
I guess we can just go down the line. always sort of written bits and pieces of things, and like written some like bad confessional queer poetry, and like written some essays when I was like, I want to be the next David Sedaris. And then I sort of like found my way to theater by happenstance, and I was like, oh, I really like, I like being able to, I like the way you can sort of juxtapose tone and aesthetic and like leap around a bit in the way that you can't in other forms, and play with three-dimensional space, and I found that sort of stuck for me as like a form of writing that it made sense for me to work in.
Yeah, I also, I came into theater originally doing, in high school and college doing performing and acting, and I like doing that, but I always felt like there was a limit to what you could do, because you're always your face, and you're always your body, and you're always your voice, and there's sort of there's only so far I can stretch that, but I can stretch my mind and the words on the page as far as I can keep stretching them forever. Hopefully, as long as I have my mind. So I think that was the realization for me, was like, well, I'm going to focus, and I'd always been, interested in writing, whatever. And so, I think that was the realization that I should be on this side of the stage. Wait, no, actually on your side. Right now, I have most of the time we're over there. We're over here because we're over there.
My high school asked me to write the winter play for them when I was 18 about like teen issues and the way teens live today and being me. What I ended up doing was this play about escapism and addiction. And it was very hard. It was a full production, and I was writing all the way up till Tech Week. So we were like frozen maybe 2 days before the performance, and I thought, this is really difficult. I'm never doing this again. And then a week later, I got another idea. And that solidified that plays were my primary form, and I kept pursuing that.
Well, there are other playwrights in my family, as is documented in my play. In middle school, I went to a magnet middle school in Michigan, Maryland, and was supposed to have a drama program, but I just really disliked the drama teacher that I had, and so I was like, she doesn't know what she's talking about, I've been doing this since I was 7, and so I would be like, bump whatever, she's saying, and with my friends in the back of the class, we were like, we're gonna write about our lives, and so I wrote this short play called The Weird Kids. And so later on in life, I was like, oh my god, you're not crazy, you've always been this person. So I think just wanting to communicate an experience that I felt was not in the norm. I was like, this makes sense. We have to make a play about it.
I came to, I think, theater in a different way, which is through speech and debate, because I did the interpretation side. So I did speech and debate all 4 years, and got to act with other people's words, and so I got an education on script and characterization and how to build a moment and transitions, and most importantly, how you can do that efficiently in 10 minutes, because you only get 10 minutes, and you get a room like this, and you have to affect them, in order to move on. And so when I got to college, still didn't know that was playwriting, but fell into that in my senior year of college, and had a professor pull me to the side and say, oh, you go to grad school for this, which I didn't know either. But the play Nan is my first idea, basically. So it's been, I've been with it for a while, developing it from a 10-minute to my thesis play to what you'll see this week.
I came to playwriting through going to school for dance. I was a choreographer. And then my senior thesis, I adapted a short story by Leigh M that was about C.S. Lewis and Susan Pemberley, like the Chronicles of Marion and stuff. It was interesting because like in my dance career, my teachers were always telling us to go abstract, and I always was pushing for narrative and character. So I'm a contrarian, you can't tell. And like I said, fast forward to like after I graduated college, and I was like, I was very reticent to call myself a playwright. I would just say I wrote some scenes, and I was attending this like kind of pickup theater kind of meet up. And you'd show up and bring pages, and people would do them, and it was fun. I called it theater church, and I had a good friend of mine, Kevin Arthur, for those of you who may know, he's a artistic director of Miles Square Theater out in Hoboken, New Jersey now, and he pulled me aside one day and he said, Jason, and like he's like mostly drag persona. He's like, Jason, honey, no one's gonna call you a playwright until you start calling yourself that first. And I was like, okay, like I use that in mantra for everything. Like if I want to send attention, I have to be the first one to name myself that.
Great. Yeah. No, thank you all for sharing. I mean, I think it's very obvious, like, even just hearing all of y'all's stories, like, no one's path was exactly the same as to how you got here, which I think, for me always, like, releases something when you're thinking about, like, oh, how do you become a playwright, or how do you do X, Y, Z, and sometimes the path just takes you there, which is what it kind of sounds like for each of you in different ways. So thanks for sharing that. I feel like some of you all were already alluding to this, but it's like, I want to talk a little bit about like, where do you all get your inspiration? Where do stories come from, for you? And perhaps maybe I will invite the festival playwrights to talk maybe specifically about your play in terms of like where inspiration came from for that. And resident playwrights, you can either talk generally about your work, or you can also pick like one play and kind of talk about where the inspiration came from for that as well. But where does your inspiration come from? Who feels like they want to start? Do we want to start in the middle this time, someone?
Well, the inspiration for Children of the Wise is my grandfather, Ruben Grijalva, my dad's dad, who was a playwright, and he had a super interesting, challenging life that the play kind of explores. And I think generally I'm super drawn to, I really like history, and I really like sort of exploring times and places that I am not in a unique way, or in a way that I feel like kind of like breaks open reality or our preconceived ideas about what a certain time or what a certain group of people are like. So I'm very much drawn to stories that just sort of like challenge what you think is possible. So yeah, I think in my play I'm sort of like, oh, he could do this, or he could have that experience, but what does that mean for life,
Thank you. Yeah, who wants to share next?
Specifically for Nan, I guess the inspiration for the work is like, I guess I just always had an attachment for like to be near other older Hawaiian women, because I did lose my Hawaiian grandmother at a fundamental age where I didn't get to ask her certain questions before she died, and I think Hawaiian people are always thinking about their loved ones leaving, and that knowledge being lost between generations and stuff. So the inspiration came from that initially, but I've noticed that the plays that I keep writing, there is an older woman in it, and I just find that is my more natural voice that I like to speak in, because you should listen to older folks, and those are some of the most complex characters that we have in society, and I think people don't listen to them as much, and I think that's a lesson I took away from losing, an elder, or we call it puna, at a fundamental age. Is like, now I'm listening for that voice everywhere I go. So if I could write it, try to bring these folks back in a certain way, is really nice. Like plays give you a chance to world build worlds that don't exist anymore, and I'm losing a lot of worlds rapidly as we go through life, you know.
I was gonna say, yeah. So it was interesting. So when in the beginning of my playwriting career, all of that, when I first started writing, I was almost exclusively writing like science fiction, like fantasy, kind of like things that were removed from our actual world, because I think I had internalized a lot of like stuff in the media about like non-white and non-straight bodies and identities, and I just assumed that in order to tell my story, I always had to tell it categorically, because you know the predominant society would never look upon my body and identify itself with me, and so I have always had to like be one step removed, and I think that like hurt a lot of my early work because it didn't feel real in the ways, and so I found as I've been writing more plays and getting more and more autobiographical and more personal. This play is the most personal, most autobiographical because it like is not too far off from a real story that happened to me. I was a child at a conservative Christian summer camp when I fell in love with a boy. But the impetus to write the play really kind of like hit me one day. Spotify was playing and Sade came on, and Sade is a focal point in my play because I was reminded of this moment where this boy that I fell in love with played Sade over the phone to me and introduced me to the wonderful world of black music, and that was like a wonderfully liberating moment. I was like, oh, that I want to give other people that feeling, you know, of liberation.
So, I mean, I like to look for three things. I think one is I like a topic that has a reading list that I'm going to actually enjoy. That like is something I would want to dig into anyway. So I look at a new play as an opportunity to learn about something with like a reason to do it. That's going to motivate me to dig deep into a topic. That's the kind of like external thing, topic I'm interested in. Then there's the internal part. It's like, where am I in this topic? And I mean, I think of it as like laundering autobiography through these topics. You know what I mean? I don't want to write autobiographical, like literally, but I try to embody every single character in every single play with some piece of me. And so I've got to find the connection between this topic, whatever it is that I'm interested in, that I want to learn about in the world, and then this personal, like, how, you know what I mean? How can I tell a personal story within this topic? And then the third thing is I look for a question that I don't have a good answer to. I look for, like, typically like a moral dilemma that's like, I don't know which way you should go with this, you know? I don't know which way I would go in the situation. I can see both sides. And if I know which way I would go with any certainty, then it's not a play. But if I'm like really not sure, then there's probably something there that I need to like dig into. And it doesn't mean I'll resolve it, but you know, at least there'll be some dramatic tension in my not knowing what the hell to do with the question.
Everyone else is very good answers. Inspiration. I don't know. Kind of just what filters into my brain from the world, from the people around me, from the news, from where I am in life. And also, I guess, from what it is to be on stage and have bodies on stage and the potential there. I think it's really just the way what I started.
I work really closely with this woman, Dr. Aidaa Peerzada, I mentioned earlier, and she often says that before she took her first breath, God whispered in her ear, "Make art." So I stole it, and I said, Before I took my first breath, God whispered in my right ear, make art, and in my left ear, make revolution. And for me, playwriting is where I get to do both. So not everybody's gonna come with me on the corner of 40th and Broadway in Oakland, screaming at law enforcement. But if I can get you into the 99-seat black box theater, then it's a way for me to have a conversation with you in another way, right? So it's never theater for the sake of entertainment for me. It's theater that I hope incites folks into action, into movement, that they walk out of space committed to doing something in whatever realm of social justice, makes their heart sing. That's the work that I try to do. And in terms of inspiration, it's things like Tasha, right, where I could not get it out of my head or my heart about what happened to her. I've got another piece called Surviving Oakland that's about murdered, missing, and trafficked Black girls in Oakland. And someone, after seeing my play, they were like, "You do docu-theater." And I was like, "Oh, is that a thing?" and it is, like Tasha has, clips from her actual murder. Surviving Oakland is based on interviews with families that, have Black girls missing. So yeah, telling our stories in a different way as part of the movement for a more just and equitable world.
And off of this idea of inciting action and making change, when people are in a live environment, there is a change that can happen to them, not only physically as a result of spending the time in the space, but also amongst collaborators in terms of, it changes you to work on a play for the amount of time that it takes for a play to be brought to life. And so for me, when I sit down and think about what needs to be written, I also think about the people who could be there and what I hope to give them. Because I hope that being able to dig into a specific character and have challenges presented to you as an actor that you don't normally get to have, I hope that does something for you artistically. I hope that does something for you personally. And on opening night, I often, or slightly before that, I often tell people that I work with, if one person walks out feeling different at the end of this, then we have done our job. And so what the inspiration is can be anything, what the play is can be anything, but I do find myself very artistically motivated by being able to have that deep-rooted, change-oriented connection with the people who come in to the process.
Great, thank you all for sharing. And it's like we get inspiration, and then what's the next step? Like when there's inspiration, what's the process to then put it down onto into words, into a play? I know every playwright has a different process of like, what's the next step? Or what do you start with? Is it characters? Is it an outline? Do you just how does it speak to you after the inspiration comes in your next steps? So yeah, I want to kind of hear a little bit of what folks' processes are, and not just talk about the things that work, but what are some of the challenges in that? What do you do sometimes maybe when writer's block comes, or when it's hard to finish a certain thing? But yeah, share a little bit about your process.
I'll give a very practical tip for people if they want. Something that works for me is setting a timer. So if I put an hour on the clock and I say, I have to write this whole play in an hour, that does not mean that that's going to be the final play. That's not what y'all are saying. But it gets me out of the type A perfectionism and detail orientation to say the whole thing take a breather, come back, and you'll be surprised how much better it is than you think it is, and where you can start building out from that point. So that's something in my process that has been very helpful for me, realizing whole worlds instead of just getting technically bogged down in any part of the process.
Great, thanks for kicking us off, Leigh.
Just very similarly, I don't set a timer. I wish I could do it in an hour because lots of sleepless nights. But for me, that first draft is always, again, when I can't get the voices to be quiet, and I sit down and I have to write the whole piece. The whole play, the whole screenplay, whatever it is, no matter how long it takes me, which is usually like 6 to 8, sometimes 10 hours, and lots of coffee. But yeah, it's just it's spirit. And then, you know, coming back to it again and again to of course, develop, you know, more fully develop it. But yeah, I can't do it piecemeal. And that's actually part of the obstacles or difficulty I have too, is that if I'm not feeling inspired or emotionally incited, it's hard for me sometimes to sit down and do my job and do the work. Deadlines help with that. Like if I owe somebody something, that's super helpful. But if I don't owe anything, that could really take a long time to finish.
Yeah, I think I agree with a lot of that. I think so much of the process is sitting around wringing my hands, being like, I want to write something. Oh God, oh God, oh God, oh God. And then like if I have a deadline, that like it will help catalyze. Like, okay, here I am sitting and spending time on this. Yeah, I feel like I'm gonna need to try that idea out with you because I'm currently in the hand-wringing phase of things. But I think generally sort of what my process looks like is like over time I'll sort of like be jotting down ideas and like have a list of like elements, like, oh, I want I don't know, like whatever, like this idea for like this a cure of metaphorical maladies was like one thing in my last play. And so like I'll sort of just be like having these things that like come to mind and like are sitting on a list, and then like eventually the connections hopefully like emerge, and then I can be like, oh, now this is going to be a play. And then it's a matter of sitting down and writing it. So that's sort of what my process has looked like to date.
This all sounds very disciplined. I would say the key for me is I have to waste an enormous amount of time in the process. This can be the hardest part to explain to other people, but I like to go for long walks. I think the hardest thing right now in the overly connected, overly digital world, and also I have whatever other work and clients and this and that, is just to hear your own thoughts. So like be like left alone with your own thoughts, and to waste time letting those thoughts congeal. The first thing I sit down and write is never going to be the best thing, and the best thing, as much as I would love it to be able to force it out, it's got to happen by. I mean, it's not wasted time, it turns out, but it sure feels like it, you know, when you go for the long walk and you're just trying to get to the heart of the thing you're trying to do by clearing everything else out. You know, I usually at the end of a process, playwriting process, will actually go somewhere else and try and stay somewhere else for a few days to like just change up my world enough to not be distracted by all the other things. So I think that's part of it. That's not all of it. You do also have to set clocks and all that stuff too. Gotcha.
Yeah, I love hearing all of this. I think for me, I definitely relate to the like, oh, I heard something, or like, oh, that's what they're talking about, or that's what I want to hear them talking about, and that these ideas sort of like come to me. I think I operate in like a cumulative space where you're kind of like going about your day and you're like, oh, sort of a process of like organizing all of these puzzle pieces that have kind of like showed up and within their own timeline. And I really like, I think since I like to write about this kinds of topics that I'm not necessarily like living in, I do spend a lot of time like reading, and then I'll sort of just like read a history book until I get really angry, and then I'll start writing something. So that's definitely, and yeah, I think I like to like do different sorts of things. I think that I discovered that I'm not one of those people that can like sit at their desk and be like, no, it's the right thing. I'm much more inspired by like going out into the world or being in a new place or like at the park or something. So I think that finding those times to like care for yourself as a person and do things that are good for you so that you feel inspired. I'm trying to like implement those things into like my practice.
Yeah, I'm having a lot of thoughts because, like, thinking on what I do, I can't say what I do first, second, third, but some of the things I think about is just like, if I want to enjoy the play. That if I write it, I want to be in the audience and say like, oh, I enjoyed that. And the thing I guess I enjoy about theater is getting to one particular scene and it being the emotional turning point or something. So I can't really start the play until I have a place in the play where if I were to do it correctly and everything lined up, I would be moved to do X, Y, Z, or this emotion would come out because something. And I guess playwriting is different from like other crafts because you can't put too much on it because the feeling is ephemeral. Whatever you're trying to capture is ephemeral. So trying to put something concrete on, okay, my first act is gonna have 4 scenes and blah, blah, blah. You would have to just start, like, for me at least, I start emotionally, like where I want this particular character to end up. And so that helps me find him in the beginning. And then I start from the beginning about like world build, like what's their name? Where are we? What time? And I just do the front matter first before I can go into the first scene. And so then you tackle the first scene, like how would I want my audience to enter this world? How would I like to enter this world? And then you just go piecemeal like that. And then what I'll do after I'll have an idea is go find plays that I think my play is in conversation with. And then maybe I'll borrow something like their structure. Maybe I'll borrow a particular move that they did in that play so that if somebody were to see it, they could see the illusion that I'm making, and that would help them place this world and place a character, place them emotionally, because they would be interacting with former art or plays or what have you. Mostly art, but it's also about reading around the idea. And my plays are going to be about Hawaii no matter what, so if I have something to say about Hawaii, then I can begin the play. But until I have something to say about Hawaii, it's too ephemeral too. That helps ground it, at least for me, is having something to say. Something like that.
Oh yeah, so I have a novelist friend of mine, and I would ask to read through his work, and he would send me some chapters and stuff, and like after a few weeks, he'd send me like all these other tens of thousands of words. Like, how do you do this? This is incredible. Like, I don't understand. And he told me one of his writing teachers gave him this little maxim. What that was: the more you write, the more you write. I was like, oh, okay, that's cool. I like that idea. And so there was a period of about like 12, 18 months where I was writing every day. I was like subscribing to the whole morning pages, like Artist Way kind of thing. And it was an incredibly prolific year for me. I wrote like 3 full lengths in a year, which is like way faster than I normally write. And ever since then, I feel like I'm trying to get back to that pace. But it's interesting because like I also back when I was doing more, whenever I'm approaching like a play, especially if it's like a little bit further removed from like our world, I start with like world building. I don't necessarily start with character. I try and figure out like how does this world work, what are the internal like, systems and logics, who are the other characters on the periphery, and I actually just start to write like fan fiction about this world, about like the characters that aren't even like the main crux. This is really embarrassing. I remember like during my first production of the first play that I had produced, it was like a zombie social justice play, and I literally like made fan art of the cats because I was just like so like such a big. That's when I realized like I have to be a fan of the thing that I'm writing. I was like, what's the point for me? Maybe that's transgender.
Great, thank you. Yeah, I feel like I'm like learning so much about each one of you all, but I'm also like, ooh, it's fun to take away different processy, like, you know, techniques or like how do folks enter in. There's so many different ways to enter into the work. So thanks for sharing that. So now, you know, there's something down on paper, and theater does not exist without other collaborators. You know, it's different than other writing, where it can, you know, a novel can go out there and be on its own by itself. But, you know, theater has to exist with other people in the process. So thinking about then, you have a play, you know. What does it look like in terms of like when you bring other collaborators into your process? So whether that's directors or actors or even audience is definitely a collaborator in the process, but you know, towards the end of the process. So just thinking about, you know, when you think about your collaborators, like what's really important to you, either in terms of like what are you looking for in collaborators, how do you find your collaborators, like what's that the next step after you have the play?
I've often called myself like a hedge witch in terms of playwriting and theater because I do a lot of like self-production and like that, and I'm a part of the theater ensemble, and one of our core kind of ideas, beliefs, or values is something called creative kinship, and that's an idea where we like belong to each other creatively, and so I view it as like a covenantal relationship, and you know, my artistic thriving is only like enabled by their artistic thriving, and so like I try not to enter creative partnerships like because I feel like you can, you know, get great benefit of being able to do a lot of harm in that relationship. So like choose your bedfellows wisely. That's one thing that I always say. And the other thing, I've recently had this experience where is that I was mentioning that I've been writing more like autobiographically or personally now. I noticed that in like the rehearsal process for this play, I did not anticipate how like the emotional impact of like having a very clear author insert in this like narrative, and then having actors be like break down that character and all of their faults and flaws. I'm like, yeah, this person's like kind of a terrible person. I'm like, you start a fire, like.
So for me, but particularly in the early drafts, I have to not just trust you as a person, I have to trust your craft. And so for me, that's meant a very small circle of folks that help do dramaturgy, right, on the piece, help me think through the piece. Folks who, when they say, you're being lazy here, I can hear that, you know. And of course, then, you know, having actors read your piece, there's things that you hear then that's impossible for you to see when you, or just, it's just, you know, you and what's on the page. I know I had a particularly profound experience. So Tasha's a one-woman play, and I did it for 5 years. It was just me. And then I broke a little bit. And then so Janae Simon did it. And she's amazing. but oh my God, I saw and heard, like I thought Tasha was done by that point, and then watching that process with her and the director actually helped me actually finish the play and bring elements into it that would not have been there had I not gotten out of the way and let somebody else say those words. And then I guess lastly, like I'm actually excited about this cohort, and we've already spent time reading, to each other some of our work, and y'all are so brilliant, and I artistically trust each of these folks, and I think the next 2 years of these collaborators is going to be really good.
I think so too. I think I'm really excited to have this group of people and the support of the Playwrights Foundation and the broader group of people that they are connecting. Yeah, I think for me, I haven't had a lot of situations where I've been hand-picking my collaborators. It's sort of been more like I've applied to this thing and gotten this thing and then been paired with this director. And I feel like I've generally lucked out in those situations. I think the people sort of doing the decision making were luckily people who understood what I was doing and understood people who would be a good fit for that. But yeah, I don't think I haven't really spent much time doing that work of finding collaborators. Perhaps that's a task for the next year and years to come.
Yeah, I think this group is going to be great. I think one of the things, so you have your first readers group, right? Or I do. A lot of people have their okay, when I have something finished, I'm going to send it to this person because I know they're going to like it and they're going to give me the validation I need. And I'm going to send it to this person because there's a good chance they're going to hate it and they're going to give me that if I need that too, right? And so I think I like to balance my portfolio of readers with the easy reads and then the ones who don't like anything, and I feel like it's part of it. And then the other thing is that first read through with actors is critical. One, I think it's one of the reasons that I wanted to write plays other than other things is because that experience, if the actors get it, there's nothing more validating than that because they'll elevate it, they'll make it better than what you wrote, right? You can also make it worse than happens, but but in the best situations, they'll make it better than what you wrote, and that's the moment where you feel like it's a real thing, right? When it stops being your thing and starts being our thing is the exciting thing about doing theater versus other forms of writing. So yeah.
Yeah, I'm so excited about y'all. It's really fun to be in conversation too with the festival playwrights and hear how our artistic brains are crossing over in a bunch of different areas. I'm always on the lookout for cool people to be collaborating with, and I have a little bit of a sixth sense about the people who will work if they got a brain on them and if they are really energized by challenges and want to dig into puzzles and mysteries and things like that, and are transparent communicators as well, and have that sense of delicacy but also directness. If my bat signal picks up on that from someone, I'm like, all right, let's see what happens. Let's see how this evolves. And theater is, one production can be very ephemeral, but if you have a body of work, sometimes you can have those longitudinal relationships, right? You can have things that stretch much further than you ever think they will, and I don't know that can be predicted. So that's part of the reason why I feel like it's so important to stay receptive, because it's not common, but you also don't want to miss it.
In terms of collaborators, if because I'm so early career and just getting started, it was hard for me to imagine my place getting productions. So I always just tried to do it as best as I could, like on the page. That it was an enjoyable read, and like this is how people are going to meet the play, maybe ever. So at least they get to meet it here, and I can like control a lot of that. And I also think about other writers. Like I feel like I write for other writers. So if other writers read it, they would see some things that maybe a civilian wouldn't, and that is. You know. But what's funny is there's a lot of things that I'll do and writers will see, and then I'll maybe do a self-read for my girlfriend or pitch it to her, and she'll say that doesn't make any sense. And that's the most valid. You know, so I'll ask her, okay, so I'm gonna go from this scene to this scene. She says, why? You know, like I thought we were gonna go there, and okay, and then I'll switch it. And she should write more often than she's wrong, because she's also going to be in the audience. So, you know, that's my trusted person. My professors, you know, people who have similar taste levels, I feel like I enjoy their plays too, then they'll help me we could be in collaboration about like, oh, that turns you on, and that turns me on. Like, put that in the play. So different things like that. But I know that like actors, especially strong actors, you can start to delete a lot of things. So because you're over-explaining, because you think you wouldn't be able to convey that, but the actor can do it with a gesture, the actor can do it with a look. And so you can start deleting, and then the play starts to breathe, and then it doesn't feel like you're spoon-feeding anything. That it's more, you're giving more space between making sure they get it, and they need to hear every single line, but sometimes the moment is in a gesture, so I can cut entire monologues because it was captured in something. And I can write towards them and ask them questions like, hey, you know the character well enough, what would they say here? Okay, you say that, now what would he say to that? And so then we can build a scene, like if a scene isn't working, then you can really tell when a scene is not working. Okay, make it work. What would you say? Where are we driving towards? You know, because the actors need the textual evidence to do the job. And if they're asking you to, why? It needs to be answered on the page. Because they need to know, because they're the ones doing it. So if they can reach for it on the page without me being there, that's ideal. And then if I need a little lifeline for explaining, and I need you to sell this moment, then I'll give them that cheat sheet about like, this is the moment I was thinking it was going to be, so, you know, could I see that? And it'll work, even though, you know. So those are the different ways I think like I can have other people enhance the work.
Okay, fine, I'll answer. Actually, was not, I haven't been in that situation where I'm like choosing my collaborators. I'd love to choose collaborators.
You did on this process.
Yeah, to find that. I did a little bit. I did, but also it's very relational.
Yeah.
Like, it's very organic and relational. That's how like most of my collaborative relationships have come to be. So I think in terms of like sharing stuff with people, I think because I'm like an actor, I like to share things with actors because there's like a lingo that I'm like, okay, if you read this and I know what you know, or like, then I know what's going to happen. And it's interesting because I've been in a lot of spaces where I've workshopped my plays with people who are not like experienced actors or who are like newer actors. And so that brings out like a very different thing in what your process is and how you're like understanding what your work is. And then on the other hand, like in the times where I'm like, oh my gosh, like I'm like secluded in the middle of nowhere with like really smart people. This is the thing that happens when you are an actor. You're just secluded in the middle of nowhere with really smart people. You're like, okay, let's get them all to like read my thing, and you're like, okay, if these people that I can't afford to hire could do it, then I'm not crazy. So I think that's kind of like something that I look for. Is like, when can I get like that like older actor who like has been in the game for a minute to like read this part, and then if they make it work without thinking too hard, you're like, okay, I'll keep going.
So I'm not sure if y'all have this experience of like being part of like writers groups or that kind of thing. I've been a part of several of them that all use various forms of dramaturgical facilitated response, like Liz Lerman's creative critical response kind of framework. And while I see them as being very useful, oftentimes I get so frustrated with the softness of the feedback that I would get in those spaces because no one wants to hurt her feelings or say something that would, I don't know, damage the work or something like that. And I struggle with the tension between like wanting to honor that intention, but also like I think I told y'all when I was looking for a dramaturg, like, look, I don't want someone to hold my hand. I want a straight assassin. I want someone to kind of go in and kill my darlings because I can't do it. Like and so I'm curious, like if y'all have ever had, or how y'all find those people who will just like cut through bullshit to tell the truth when something's not working.
I think we talked about it a little bit in the cohort, that there's a certain level of trust that you need, I think, to get to that point, right? This week we kind of come back to back. It's like you have to feel like that person's on your side, right? Like I don't have to answer your question to find it, but I can say that I think the prerequisite to that kind of earnest response, right? That real reaction, that, darling assassin, or whatever you call it. Like, I think, because you can't take it from someone who you think is antagonistic or neutral towards you, they have to love you, and they have to love the work, and they have to be fighting for the work by killing the things you love about it.
First of all, I want to see the social justice zombie play. And I know I keep saying her name, but she is my creative partner in crime, and that's Dr. Aidaa Peerzada, the Laura Bottom Players, and if you know her, you know she's no bullshit. And so for the last 9 years, she's the first person to get anything I write. And exactly what you were saying, she loves me. I know she loves me. We've been working together since 2008, when I moved to Oakland, but she's also fierce, and she's smart, and she's a dramaturg, and she's a director, and she's an actor, and she's another Black woman. So that's also really important to me because my stories are often rooted in the Black female experience in particular. For those first couple of reads, right, if I'm having to like explain or validate my lived reality, like that's not gonna work. But yeah, like she will kill my darlings. And then tell me she loves me and give me a deadline for when the next round needs to be in her inbox. And that has really driven me the last 9 years to keep writing and get better.
I love this. I'm gonna open it up for more questions, either more questions that you all have for each other after you've heard the conversation together, or from anybody here, if there's any questions that you all have for the entire playwrights or one playwright in particular.
Yeah. What do you love about writing and what do you hate about writing?
What do you love about writing and what do you hate about writing?
I love when you're like, when it's working, right? And you're like, there are words coming out of you and they're fun and they're clear and they're like doing things with language that like surprise you as they come out of you. And like when that happens, it's like such a, like that's what one is chasing, I think, or that's what I'm chasing. And that's like 1% of the time, and then I hate the other 99% of the time.
Kind of what you're saying, that there are these very few moments that when I've been writing, and when you get, I think some people call it flow state, I call it channeling the muse. When I am writing and I'm like, I kind of go into like a trance and I wake up from it and I'm like, I don't know who wrote this, but this is great, like thank you. And like I always feel it feels like a drug to me. It's like I'm always trying to chase that transfigurations moment, when you're like not in your body, you're just like, ugh, thing that I hate is I hate the keyboard. I hate the fact. I hate the fact that it is this cookie pocket thing that I have to use to write. I wish I could like handwrite really fast. I can't.
We'll just talk loud.
And I just wish the process of writing felt more, I don't know, like embodied or like there's emotion to it. You know, I hate that it usually means that in a chair and attached to a desk. You know, I wish it was like more dynamic. You know?
That part, I didn't want to go first because I knew somebody else was going to say it better, and you both did. That trance-like state. Like I said, when the voices are so loud that I just sit down and it does, it feels like a whoosh. Like if I had to vocalize it, I just did vocalize it for some effect. That's what it feels like, and it is. And then you read it, and you're like, oh shit, right? These words matter, and then I'm excited for the rewrite process. I think it's hard for me to say something I hate about writing. I can say as a writer, I get frustrated with myself when I'm not being disciplined about my craft. Like when I can't take 10 minutes out of the day and do my pages or focus on a script, or if I look up and it's been like a month and a half and I like that's like agony and torture and like it's a really a shaming thing for me that I'm really glad that I'm gonna have some accountability to write pages each month and work on. So not about the process, but about the identity. I think sometimes is where I struggle.
The echo of the shame factor is definitely something that resonates with me, but also the transcendent, muse speak that everyone's referring to. I think what I love about writing is that when that happens, it is like a kind of religious experience. It's like a magic through something's coming through you, and you're like, someone said, did I do that? Like that feeling. But the thing that sucks about writing is you can't control when it's going to arrive. All you can do is sit down and discipline, which sucks because discipline's hard. But to put yourself in the place to be there to catch it when it falls. But it really sucks that you can't control when it's going to fall.
We can hear you.
Yeah, no, it's good. I think it's for the video, but that dichotomy of like it's so beautiful when it arrives, but you never know. You can't force it. You can't control it. It's going to run. It's going to come. That's the hard thing.
Any other questions from either from the group or back there?
Who do you write for?
Who do you write for?
I write for Black people first. I just do, and I particularly try to tell our stories in ways that are reflective of our full humanity, right? Because a lot of the stories we see about Black folks is trauma porn. I just wrote a screenplay, and it was so important to me that it was the character had a transformation, right? Because a lot of times with Black work, like it starts sad and it ends sad. As if we don't have joy or laughter, we're not whole beings, even inside of the trauma. So I read for Black folks first, and hope that when they come into space, that they feel validated, affirmed, seen, held, healed, loved, and then everybody else, right? Because I said, right, like for me, it's part of my movement work, and also being okay with the fact that not all my plays are for everybody, right? Like there's some folks like it's just not for you, and I'm okay with that, and hopefully you will be too.
And the film was amazing, and it did all those things.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
I had a playwriting teacher once who said every play that you write is a gift for someone, and that has really stuck with me. And it's not like I know who something is for when I sit down and write it, but that's just one way of conceptualizing things that has stuck with me. I think, I don't know why I'm holding this right. Cheer for you. static.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. What else was I going to say? Other than that, I write for myself. And the things I want to see and the things that are fun and interesting to me, and like the people who like out there in the world or who I know who will vibe with me and whatever that is.
I write to honor the dead, and specific beloved dead. It depends who that is, depends on what the play is. And I also write thinking about the future and contexts that I cannot imagine for this play, because I think in a certain way that if a play only functions like at one moment in time, there's something that's not a play about that. And so there's no way to imagine who those people are going to be, but thinking about it as something that is going to outlive me is a way of being hopeful, right? That there will be theater in 200 years, and there will be people in 200 years, and they might see this play. So I write for that person as well. Anybody else want to hold the totem?
It's a talking stage. Not deteriorating. It's risen to its special place. Yeah, I think I look at your thing though. You hear my comment. I feel like I write to like conjure space where the space has been taken away, or where we feel like to like fill in the blanks where there's been like massive erasure. I think that sometimes I'm just like, okay, I feel that there's like a part of this thing here, but no one's talking about it, or and so I think a part of it is like world mapping the reality that we live in. And I'm like, wait, what was the story? And do we know the story? And are we gonna talk about where we've been to understand where we're going? So I think for me, it's like GPSing life and then conjuring it to see what other people. I feel like theater can have this sort of seance power, where you get to kind of break reality and allow people to really dream and actually use their imagination so that they could have the capacity to have a solution to one of the many problems that our society faces, that our civilizations face. So I think, yeah, I want people to be able to come and like dream and then leave and be better.
I mean, this question for me is especially difficult to navigate because there are different types of theater. In Hawaii, our theater, if you've ever seen like the Merry Monarch Festival, that's costume, it's plot, it's theatricality, there's production in it, and that is speaking to a particular audience. Hawaii also has Hawaiian language theater, which the medium of dialogue is in Hawaiian language. And so your audience is 99% Hawaiian, but 99% of Hawaiians don't speak Hawaiian. So there's an accessibility issue in seeing yourself represented on stage, and yet you couldn't access the story, even in your own language. So what I'm doing is very difficult because I have to reflect reality, which is, as much as I would like to build worlds that hopefully I would see one day, someone needs to build the world currently. And me and my other writer, Hawaiian friend, it's not nice, but there's not anything that we've seen, movie, book, that felt like really captured something and moved us as Hawaiians and as writers. So usually there's great Hawaiian things, attack anything about Hawaii or so there's the balancing of things because I have to confront the fact that I am indigenous and I also am very Western. And those things can exist in this particular medium of American theater, but the substance can still be truthful to me. So again, I'm sitting in the audience and I'm appreciating the playness of it, the play craft, and then it also speaking to me substantively of being a modern Hawaiian, you know, those kind of things. So it's difficult because my audience is, I can't say it's Hawaiians first. And I don't like not saying that. But it's also not white folks first either. It's not non-native. The challenge is to get both of those people in the room because they are going to be both in the room. And can they both walk away with the same thing? That's challenging. Yeah, it's not accomplishable part at the time.
Okay. I really resonated with what Leigh was saying. I can't remember where I saw this. It might have been TikTok, where someone was talking about like ancestor worship, and that's something that in my family was a very powerful practice in Chinese culture. We like there was literally a shrine to my grandmother and my grandmother's like living room that we burned incense for, and laid out fruit for, and bowed before, and this is all glossed over. I was like, oh, you know, within our Chinese Christian kind of context, like, oh, this is fine. This is not ancestor worship. This is like something else. But like, so I've always been very familiar with the ancestor worship because it's a very kind of like specific and concrete thing. But then this person was talking about descendant worship, this kind of flipped idea, and being like this idea of being kind of seated at this very interesting kind of like cinching point in time where like everything that came before you is you, and then you become everything that comes after you. And I love this idea of trying to not achieve immortality, but trying to reach forward in time to the people that will come after you, whether they be blood or community or ideology, to give them a gift, you know, from this other point in time.
I have a hard time. I feel like I don't know who it's going to be for until it's out there. You know, I think that what you have to do as a writer, what I have to do as a writer, is trust that the specific things that I'm interested in, if I like tell them as truthfully as possible, is going to be interesting to someone else that you don't know what it is. So I wrote a play about baseball and steroids, and it was. You know, it got into a level of research and sort of nerdiness about the topic. A place called Value Over Replacement, which is a nerdy title to begin with, and it's a deep baseball statistic. And I was like, well, this will be the hardcore baseball fans are gonna love this play. And the biggest fan I ever read this play, was an older woman who like wasn't connected to baseball in that deep way. She just connected to the story because. Yeah, there's this like, okay, I have all this stuff there, so if the baseball fan sees it, they're gonna know it's right, like I got the details right. But the story that it's telling, this is where the personal comes in. I never played professional baseball, but I put this personal story in it, spoke to enough people that you don't have to know anything about baseball necessarily, or steroids, or sabermetrics to like connect to this story. I mean, this person loved it, and talk to me about it in detail. Why they loved it and how they didn't care about baseball. I guess that's what I'm shooting for, is the person who doesn't give a shit about what I'm writing about, coming out still loving the play. That's a win for me. But I don't know who they are.
Until they show up.
Until they show up. That's the nice surprise is coming away and going, oh, yeah, you got what I was doing. It wasn't, the baseball was a thing on the surface, there's something else happening there.
Thank you. Thank you for those extra questions, and also, thank you all for sharing more about your craft and how you do it, and what's at the heart. I really appreciate to share at the conversation, or maybe, you know, sharing a little bit about anything you're looking forward to in the festival or in the Resident Playwright program. Just kind of opening it up to final thoughts.
Like,
It's very open.
just for the record, I'm definitely like, I will like run around and like write something, or like go like do a dance class and like write something, or then like, you know, it might always be very neat. It might take a while to get it back into your script, but I'll be sitting at a desk, you know.
So I guess as my final thought, I just want to bring Alicia Custer into this room. She is the playwright for the piece that I'm dramaturging in the festival. It's directed by Elizabeth Carter, and it's called Winter Spirits. And to your point, you know, that this process was how you sort of got to pick your collaborators. But as a playwright, I had the privilege, the honor of being interviewed and then selected by someone as brilliant as Alicia, and we lost her in the middle of the process. But I know that she will be sitting here. I just wanted to make sure we said her name today, and that we keep saying her name throughout this festival, and lifting her piece of work.
Thank you. Thanks, Pat. Yeah, the other festival playwright that is not with us is Aidaa Robinson, who wrote The Great Purgation as well, because she is, for personal reasons, is in New York right now, and virtually participating in the festival. But thank you also for bringing us in. Any other final thoughts from folks, either about the conversation or about, you know, the process of the festival or in Residence?
I almost think that I've been trying to get going and it hasn't been successful, so maybe this is not a good thing. But it's something that I hate, one of the things I hate about writing is how lonely it is. And I'm always fascinated by people who have writing partners, who write a single thing together. I'm like, I don't understand how that works. But I want to like figure out how to do it with someone. And there was a period in time where I was basically getting a bunch of my pairing up with a bunch of my friends, and I was like, let's be promiscuous playwrights. Let's be slutty with our playwriting and try and pitch each other a story we could write together. And nothing has been written. But so many interesting ideas came from those just sessions. Hey, I'm gonna pitch you this thing. You pitch me this thing. Tell me about you, so I can understand. Smashing our learning bits together was it was really cool.
Additional thoughts to the process. Appreciate that. Well, thank you all for joining us. Thank you for watching. We still have one more weekend of the festival, as well as one play still to go tonight. We have Man tonight, and then all of the play readings next weekend, as well as the Resident Playwright Showcase. And all of those will be on demand as well. So if you're watching online and can't be here in person, they'll be on demand May 6th through 12th. So thank you all.